Young and the Restless spoilers shock. Tuesday update. Full August 27th, 2024. Sharon sat in the dimly lit hospital room, her fingers tightly intertwined with Nick's as they both stared at their daughter, Faith, lying motionless on the bed. The rhythmic beeping of the machines was a constant reminder of the fragility of the situation. The uncertainty was eating away at them both, a gnawing fear that had taken root the moment they learned of Faith's accident. "She's going to be okay, right?" Sharon whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and desperation. Her eyes, swollen from crying, were fixed on Faith's pale face, searching for any sign of improvement, any flicker of movement that might indicate she was coming back to them. Nick squeezed Sharon's hand, his own heart heavy with the weight of the unknown. "We have to believe she will be," he said, though the conviction in his voice wavered. "But we also need to be prepared, just in case." Sharon turned to look at him, confusion and fear clouding her gaze. "What do you mean?" Nick took a deep breath, the words catching in his throat as he forced himself to confront the possibility he had been dreading. "I mean, we need to be ready for anything. If Faith needs surgery, if she needs something major, we have to make sure we can pay for it. We need to be ready to do whatever it takes." Sharon's eyes widened in realization, and she felt a cold dread settle in the pit of her stomach. "Nick, we've already been through this with Cassie. We lost her. We can't lose Faith too." Nick closed his eyes, mention of Cassie's name bringing back a flood of memories of another hospital room, the same gut-wrenching fear, holding on to hope until it was ripped away from them. Cassie's death had left a scar on Nick's soul, a wound that had never fully healed. And now, the thought of losing Faith, reliving that nightmare all over again, was more than he could bear. "I know, Sharon," Nick said, his voice cracking under the weight of his emotions. "I've been living with that guilt every day. If anything happens to Faith, I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive myself." Sharon saw the anguish in Nick's eyes, the self-reproach that had haunted him for years. She knew that he had never forgiven himself for Cassie's death, that he had carried that burden with him like a dark shadow. And now, with Faith's life hanging in the balance, that shadow loomed larger than ever. "We can't let that happen, Nick," Sharon said firmly, her voice steadying as she reached out to touch his face. "We have to stay strong for Faith. We have to do everything we can to help her pull through this. We can't let our past define our future." Nick nodded, his resolve hardening. "You're right. We'll do whatever it takes. We'll make sure she gets the best care possible, no matter what it costs." As they sat together in the silent room, united in their determination to save their daughter, the weight of the past and the fear of the future pressed heavily upon them. But there was also a flicker of hope, a fragile belief that they could still turn the tide. Faith would wake up, and that they would get a second chance. Meanwhile, across town, another chapter in the Newman family saga was unfolding. Claire had just received devastating news. She'd been fired from her job as a nanny. The reason was unclear. The result was the same. She was out of work, and her future suddenly seemed uncertain. Claire had always prided herself on being independent, on making her own way in the world, but now she found herself adrift, unsure of what her next step should be. At the same time, Kyle Abbott was facing his own set of challenges. After leaving his position at Newman Enterprises under Victor Newman's watchful eye, Kyle had returned to Jabot, determined to prove himself as a capable leader. His relationship with Victor had always been complicated, filled with power struggles and conflicting loyalties. But in the end, Kyle knew where he truly belonged, with his family, Jabot. But with his return came a realization that had been slowly dawning on him. His priorities had shifted. Fierce determination that had once driven him to fight for custody of his son, Harrison, had given way to a more measured understanding of his own limitations. Kyle had always wanted to be the perfect father, to provide Harrison with the stability and love that he had longed for as a child. But the demands of his new role at Jabot were all-consuming, and he knew that he couldn't be both the father and the CEO that he wanted to be. It was a difficult decision, but Kyle knew it was the right one. He had to focus on Jabot, on proving to his father that he was capable of leading the company into the future. and that meant stepping back from the custody battle and giving Summer the responsibility she had so passionately fought for. When Kyle broke the news to Summer, it was met with mixed emotions. She had always believed that Kyle's fight for Harrison was a testament to his love for their son, but she also understood the weight of the decision he had made. Summer had always been fiercely protective of Harrison, and now that Kyle had given her full control over their son's future, she felt both empowered and overwhelmed. "Are you sure about this, Kyle?" Summer asked, her voice filled with concern as they sat together in the Jab-Up boardroom. "You fought so hard for Harrison. I don't want you to feel like you're giving up on him." Kyle shook his head, a sad smile playing on his lips. "I'm not giving up, Summer. I'm realizing that I can't do everything. I can't be the CEO Jabot needs and the father Harrison deserves, at least not right now. And I trust you. I know you'll do what's best for him." Summer reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll figure it out, Kyle. Together." With that, Kyle felt a sense of peace wash over him. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was making the right decisions, like he was finally on the path he was meant to walk. And as he looked across the table at Summer, he realized that their journey together was just beginning. Back at the hospital, Nick and Sharon remained by Faith's side, their hearts heavy with worry, but also filled with a renewed sense of hope. They had been through so much together, and they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it as a family. Cassie's memory would always be a part of them, but they couldn't let the past dictate their future. As the days turned into nights and the nights into days, they waited for a sign, a miracle that would bring their daughter back to them. And in the quiet moments, when the fear threatened to overwhelm them, they held on to each other, drawing strength from the love that had carried them through so many trials before. For Nick, the guilt of Cassie's death would always linger, but he knew that he couldn't let it consume him. He had to be strong for Faith, for Sharon, for their family. And as long as there was hope, he would hold on to it with everything he had. Billy Abbott had always been known for his fiery temperament, but lately, something more unsettling had been simmering beneath the surface. The events of the past few months had pushed him to the brink, and now, any perceived threat to his interests or affections was met with a ferocity that bordered on madness. He had become a man driven by raw emotion, quick to anger, and even quicker to act on it. The line between righteous indignation and outright fury had blurred, and those around him were beginning to see the dangerous side of Billy that he had kept hidden for so long. Adam Newman was one of those who had taken notice, and it filled him with a deep sense of unease. Adam had always been wary of Billy. There was no love lost between the two men, but lately his concern had shifted to something far more personal. Billy's behavior had become increasingly erratic, and Adam couldn't shake the feeling that his family was in danger. He could see the unhinged glint in Billy's eyes whenever their paths crossed, the barely restrained anger that seemed ready to explode at any moment. It wasn't just Adam who was at risk. It was his son, Bunner. The thought of Billy's rage being directed at his innocent child sent a chill down Adam's spine. Billy had made it clear that he would do anything to protect what he considered his own, and Adam feared that Billy saw Connor as a threat, or worse, as a pawn in whatever twisted game he was playing. There would be no stopping him. The fear gnawed at Adam day and night. He had always been a man who could handle himself, who could stand toe-to-toe with anyone who threatened him. This was different. This was about his family, about protecting his son from a man who was becoming increasingly unpredictable and dangerous.